Wing's Food Market was a grocery store that opened in 1939 and closed in 1971. If you've clicked onto this video, then you know what today is. It's Throwback Thursday. Every Thursday, I'll be releasing a new video of an old video that I did before. These new videos are longer and have more detail than the ones before. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and smash that notification bell so you get notified of my latest video. Be sure to leave a comment or a suggestion for a future video. Thanks for watching. Wing's Food Market opened in 1939 on 536 East Market Street in Salinas, California. During this period, many future supermarket chains would open, such as Stater Brothers, Public Supermarket, Giant Eagle, and Raley's. Wing Don, who was my great-grandfather, was 22 when he arrived in San Francisco, California in 1921. He was known as a paper son, which referred to Chinese people who were born in China and illegally immigrated to the United States by purchasing documentation which stated that they were blood relatives to Chinese Americans who had already received U.S. citizenship. He arrived at Angel Island, where he spent a month in quarantine being drilled with questions about his family, village, siblings, father, and other mundane details that he and his adopted father had memorized. After a month, he was released to the custody of his adopted father. Keep in mind, he was listed as 16 years old, his birth being listed as 1905. His adopted father, my great-great-grandfather, was a merchant who owned a small dry goods store in Tucson, Arizona, right in the heart of Chinatown. And yes, there was an actual Chinatown in Tucson. My great-great-grandfather went by Don Kim, and his store was located on Yuma Street in Tucson, Arizona. Wing would spend the next 2 years learning the dry goods business and eventually taking over when his father retired. In 1923, his adopted father died suddenly, and Wing was left with his 2 adopted sisters and a stepmom. Apparently, there was some sort of disagreement as to who would inherit the business, and Wing left Tucson in 1923 for San Francisco. Wing would settle in San Francisco, where he worked odd jobs with dreams of opening up his own dry goods store like his father. He would get married in 1923 and then started a family, having 5 children, 2 girls and 3 boys, with his oldest son being my grandfather. Wing and his family lived in Chinatown, living in a small apartment behind a store where he had a small business where my great-grandma worked, while he worked at the George Haas and Son Candy Factory. In 1939, with the money he and his wife had saved, they moved south to the Salinas Valley to open a grocery store and where they could raise his large family. Wing opened his store on 536 East Market Street. The family lived in both an apartment on the 2nd floor, as well as a house in the back of the store. What you see here is actual family footage in the 1940s of his store in Salinas. The store sold groceries and featured a butcher shop in the rear of the store, with a large deli counter as well. Just like any family business, it was all hands on deck when it came to working at the store. Wing and his wife, Ruth, ran the day-to-day operations, while my grandfather worked as the manager briefly, and my uncles worked both in the deli as well as the customer service when dealing with the expansion of the business. Either it was a stroke of luck or just good fortune, but during World War II, the Salinas Valley undertook a new government program called the Bracero Program. In 1942, the Bracero Program brought Mexican laborers to the United States to remedy wartime production shortages. Tens of thousands of laborers flooded the valley to work in the fields, and who better to help feed the laborers than good old Wing's Food Market? Wing's sons were able to negotiate a lucrative contract with the local farmers to feed and supply the laborers. Wing and his sons, who had become fluent in Spanish, soon were feeding over 20,000 workers during the harvesting seasons. Wing's growing family included grandkids, like my mother and my uncle, seen here with Johnny Philip Morris. In fact, all of the cousins, aunts, and uncles had a job to do at the store. All of my uncles and aunts attended the local schools in Salinas. My grandaunts and uncles had attended Salinas High School during the 1940s. Wing's Food Market would become a staple in the community of 12,000 people. John Steinbeck, the author of Grapes of Wrath and of Mice and Men, was born and had lived in Salinas. I had always wondered if he had maybe wandered into their store. The Bracero program proved to be a profitable endeavor for the small market. In 1964, the Bracero program came to an end, and Wing decided to move his family to San Jose area, soon to be known as the Silicon Valley, in the next decade. In 1964, Wing purchased a couple acres of a fruit orchard in Campbell, California. At the time, Campbell was a small town of 6,200 people made up of agriculture and fruit orchards. Wing and his sons decided to build a modern supermarket and convert the rest of the land into a shopping center. In 1964, construction began on the new Wing's supermarket. The new market was easily more than 10 times bigger than the original food market in Salinas. In 1965, the store opened to much fanfare. I once asked my uncle if this was a step up for the business. He replied, "When we were in Salinas, that was big time. High profits and low overhead. In Campbell, this was small time." I guess what he meant was that supermarkets worked on low margins, high mortgages, unionized labor, and lots of overhead. Just like before, the whole family worked at the supermarket. My uncles were the managers, my mom was a cashier, my aunt was an accountant, and my other uncles worked in the deli, were baggers, and cut meat in the meat department. There was also a small apartment in the back of the store as well. Wing's Market would continue to serve the Campbell community until around 1971, when my great-grandfather, Wing Don, would pass away at the age of 72. It may have been fitting, but when he listed his birth date, it was July 4th, 1899. Maybe it was destined for him to live out that American dream when he came to the United States with nothing but the clothes on his back. After his death, his sons would close the supermarket, and Nob Hill Grocery Store would occupy the building. My family never sold the property, and to this day, my uncles still own and manage as property owners. So what are some of your favorite memories of this place? Leave a comment or a suggestion for a future video below. Be sure to hit that like button. Thanks for watching.